But for now, she was just a tiny visitor in a big, unknown world. And the adventure was only beginning. Lyra stayed very still behind the thick tree trunk, her small body pressed tightly against the rough bark. Her big eyes watched the glowing fire and the humans sitting around it. The fire's light flickered on their faces, making them look strange and alive in the dark night. She wanted to stay hidden, but curiosity pulled her closer. Her heart beat fast. What did these humans want? Were they really dangerous? She had heard stories from her people, but now, seeing them so close, they did not look scary. Instead, they looked tired and warm, like they were trying to stay safe in the cold night. One of the humans stood up and walked away from the fire. His steps were slow and careful. Lyra's eyes followed him as he moved closer to her hiding place. She held her breath and tried not to make a sound. The man stopped just a few feet away and looked around. Then, something strange happened. He looked right at her. Lyra froze. She was small and weak. What if he grabbed her? She wanted to run, but her legs would not move. The man smiled softly, not with anger but kindness. Slowly, he crouched down to her level and spoke in a calm voice. "Hello," he said simply. Lyra's big eyes widened. She did not understand his words, but the sound was gentle. She took a small step back but stayed behind the tree. The man did not follow. Instead, he sat down on the ground, making himself smaller and less scary. Lyra wanted to know more. She slowly came out from behind the tree, her small hands shaking. She looked at the man carefully. He had dark hair and soft eyes. He held out a small piece of food, something soft and sweet-smelling. For a long moment, Lyra was afraid to take it. What if it was a trap? But her stomach growled, and the hunger was stronger than her fear. She reached out carefully and took the food. It was warm and tasted strange but good. The man laughed softly, happy to see her eat. He made soft sounds, pointing to himself and then to her. Lyra understood he wanted to be friends. Slowly, the barrier of fear between them began to fall. Lyra sat down near him, still watching the forest but feeling safer. She noticed he had small tools and strange glowing objects with him. The man showed her one. It shined like a tiny star. Lyra touched it, and it felt warm and alive. Suddenly, from the trees, a noise came again. A loud crack of a branch, followed by quick footsteps. Lyra's eyes snapped wide. She stood up quickly, ready to run. But the man held her hand tightly. "Stay," he whispered. Together, they looked into the dark woods. Shadows moved closer. More humans appeared, their faces hard and angry. They carried strange tools, and their voices were loud. Lyra's heart pounded. The man pulled her behind a large rock and shielded her with his body. She was scared, but the man's calm gave her a little hope. The angry humans searched the area. They were looking for something or someone. The man whispered, "Don't worry, I will protect you." Lyra wanted to believe him. She wanted to trust this human who had shown kindness when she was so afraid. But the fear inside her was strong. What did these angry humans want? Would they find her? Would she be safe? The night grew colder and darker. The small alien girl and the kind humans sat quietly, waiting for what would come next. The forest held its breath, and the adventure deepened. The night air was heavy with tension. Lyra's small hand squeezed tightly in the man's. Her heart felt like a drum beating loud in her chest. Every crack and whisper from the forest around them made her jump. The angry humans were still close, searching with sharp eyes and rough voices. They moved quickly, stepping over roots and brushing through bushes like wild animals hunting their prey. The kind man whispered softly, "Stay close to me. Don't make any noise." His voice was calm, but Lyra could feel the weight of danger in it. She nodded, trying to be brave, even though every part of her wanted to run away and hide forever. Suddenly, a bright light flashed through the trees. The angry humans raised their strange tools that glowed and buzzed. Lyra's eyes went wide. She had never seen anything like it. The light was almost like magic, but it was cold and frightening. The man pulled her deeper into the forest, moving fast but carefully. He knew these woods well, But for Lyra, every shadow looked like a monster. She tried to keep up, her legs small and tired. The forest seemed endless, full of dark shapes and unknown sounds. As they ran, Lyra's mind raced. Why were those humans chasing her? What did they want from a tiny alien girl? The stories she had heard from her home spoke of humans as cruel and dangerous, but this man was different. He was kind and gentle, protecting her with all his strength. They reached a small cave hidden behind thick vines and moss. The man pushed the vines aside and helped Lyra inside. It was dark and cold, but safer than the open forest. He lit a small glowing stone that gave off soft light, enough to see their faces. Lyra sat down, her body shaking from fear and exhaustion. The man sat beside her and looked into her big, shining eyes. "You're safe now," he said quietly. "I won't let them hurt you." Lyra wanted to believe him. She wanted to feel safe, but the fear was still inside her, like a shadow she couldn't shake. "Why do they want to catch me?" she whispered. The man sighed and looked away for a moment. "Some people are afraid of what they don't understand," he said. "They think you are a danger or a prize. But I don't see that. I see someone who is scared and alone." Lyra's heart softened a little. No one had ever said such kind words to her. She felt a small spark of hope grow inside her chest. Suddenly, a noise came from outside the cave. A soft but steady sound, like footsteps getting closer. Lyra froze and looked at the man. His eyes were sharp and ready. "They are coming," he said. Without a word, the man moved to block the cave's entrance. Lyra stayed behind him, hidden in the shadows. The footsteps grew louder, and voices whispered just outside. "We have to catch it before it runs," one voice said. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She did not want to be caught. She wanted to escape, to run away to a place where no one would ever find her. The man looked back at her, his eyes full of promise. "Trust me," he said. "We will find a way." The cave door shook as someone tried to push it open. Lyra held her breath, clutching the kind man's hand. She was scared, but for the first time, she felt that maybe she was not alone in this big, dark world. Outside, the forest waited silently. Inside, a tiny alien girl and a human began a new battle, one of trust, fear, and hope. And the night was far from over. The cave was silent for a long moment. Outside, the voices of the hunters faded, leaving only the rustling of leaves and the soft sounds of the night. Lyra's small body was pressed close to the man's side, her breathing slow but still shaky. She looked up at him, searching his face for answers. Then, without warning, the man reached into his bag and pulled out a small device. It was round and smooth, glowing with a soft blue light. He pressed a button, and suddenly a gentle hum filled the cave. The light grew stronger, and a shimmering shield appeared around them. A thin, glowing barrier that stretched from floor to ceiling. Lyra's eyes grew wide with surprise. "What is that?" she asked softly. The man smiled, his eyes warm but serious. "It's a shield," he said. "It keeps us safe. No one can get through it." He looked at her, waiting to see if she understood. Lyra reached out and touched the shimmering wall. Felt like cool air, not solid but real. For the first time since arriving on this strange planet, she felt protected. The fear inside her began to melt away, replaced by a small spark of hope. Outside the shield, the hunters called to each other. "Where did they go? They must be here," one shouted angrily. Lyra heard the sound of feet pounding the ground, but none could cross the glowing barrier. Inside the cave, the man sat down and patted the space beside him. Lyra hesitated but then moved closer. "Why are they chasing you?" she asked again, her voice small. He took a deep breath. "Because they don't understand you. They see something different and are afraid. They want to control it, to use it for themselves." He looked at her with sympathy. "But I want to help you. I want to keep you safe." Lyra's heart felt heavy but also warm. No one had ever promised to protect her like this before. She had spent so long hiding, afraid of everything. Now, she was beginning to believe that maybe, just maybe, she was not alone. As the night deepened, the man spoke softly about his own life. A simple life, full of quiet moments but also fear. He told her about the stars and the forests, about kindness and hope. Lyra listened, feeling a connection she never expected. Suddenly, a soft sound echoed inside the cave. Something small and fast was moving near the entrance of the shield. Lyra's eyes widened. It was a tiny creature, no bigger than her hand, with glowing eyes and silver fur. It looked at her curiously, then blinked and disappeared into the dark. The man smiled. "You're not the only strange one here," he said. "There is more to this world than you know." For the first time, Lyra laughed softly. It was a small sound but full of relief. The shield around them shimmered gently, protecting two unlikely friends from a world full of fear and danger. Outside, the hunters grew more frustrated, but they could not break through. Inside, a tiny alien girl and a kind human sat together, planning what would come next. The story was far from over, but the night held a promise of friendship, courage, and the unexpected turns that would change everything. The morning sun slipped slowly through the cracks of the cave entrance, casting soft golden light on Lyra and the man. For the first time since she arrived, Lyra felt a little safer. The glowing shield had disappeared with the dawn, but the forest outside looked less threatening now. The man had told her stories through the long night, and in return, she tried to explain bits of her own world with simple signs and drawings in the dirt. Trust was growing between them, like a fragile plant slowly sprouting in rocky soil. Lyra reached out carefully, touching the man's hand, and he smiled gently. It was a small moment, but it meant more than words could say. Outside, the forest was waking. Birds sang, and the leaves rustled in a soft breeze. The man looked around cautiously. "We can't stay here long," he said. "Others will come looking for you again. We need to find a safe place." Lyra nodded, her eyes wide but determined. She was tired of running and hiding. She wanted to understand this strange planet better, to find a place where she could be free. The man helped her to her feet, and together they stepped out into the light. The forest was beautiful in the day, full of colors and life Lyra had never seen before. Strange flowers bloomed with bright petals, and small animals peeked curiously from behind trees. Lyra's fear began to soften, replaced by wonder. As they walked, the man pointed to things, the birds, the plants, the distant mountains, and said their names. Lyra repeated them slowly, her tongue unfamiliar but eager to learn. She showed him how she could glow softly in the dark, a gift from her home. The man's eyes sparkled with amazement. But the peace did not last long. From behind a thick bush, a shadow moved. Lyra froze and looked at the man. He held out his hand, signaling her to stay calm. A young girl stepped into the light, her face curious but not angry. "Who are you?" the girl asked softly. The man smiled and said, "She is a friend. She needs our help." The girl looked at Lyra, her eyes wide. Instead of fear or anger, there was something gentle there, a kindness that surprised Lyra. Slowly, she stepped closer and held out her hand. Lyra hesitated for a moment, then reached out. Their hands touched, and the warmth between them felt like a bridge between two worlds. For the first time, Lyra felt hope not just from the man, but from another human too. The girl introduced herself as Mira. She knew the forest well and said she could help them find a safe place far from the hunters. Together, the three of them began a slow journey through the woods. But danger was still near. The hunters had not given up. They searched the forest, their voices angry and full of hate. Lyra's heart raced every time she heard footsteps or saw movement in the trees. One night, while they rested near a river, the hunters found them. The man stood in front of Lyra and Mira, ready to protect them with everything he had. But Lyra surprised everyone. She stepped forward, her small body glowing brighter than ever. A wave of light spread from her, shimmering over the trees and water. The hunters stopped, shielding their eyes, confused and scared. Lyra's power was stronger than anyone expected. It was not just light. It was hope, courage, and a promise that she would fight to protect those she cared for. The hunters retreated into the darkness, leaving the three friends safe, for now. As the fire flickered, Lyra looked at Mira and the man. She knew the road ahead would be hard, full of fear and challenges. But she also knew she was no longer alone. Together, they would face whatever came next. The forest was quiet, but the tension was thick in the air. Lyra, Mira, and the man moved carefully, always watching the shadows. The hunters were still after them, and now their pursuit felt closer, more urgent. Every crack of a branch or rustle of leaves made Lyra's heart race. She knew they couldn't hide forever. Mira led the way, her feet light and sure on the forest floor. She knew secret paths and hidden places that few humans visited. Lyra marveled at Mira's skill and courage. Even the man, who had been her protector from the start, looked tired but determined to keep them safe. At one point they came to a river. The water was cold and fast, rushing over smooth stones. Mira said this place was special, a boundary between danger and safety. She told Lyra stories about the river, about the creatures that lived beneath its surface, and the ancient trees that stood tall on its banks. Lyra listened, fascinated. This world was full of wonders, but the fear still lived in her small chest. The hunters had not stopped. In fact, they seemed closer now, their voices sometimes echoing faintly through the trees. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky orange, they set up a small camp near the river. The man gathered wood and started a fire while Mira kept watch. Lyra sat quietly, her glowing skin dimmed to a soft pulse. Suddenly, a loud crack sounded from the bushes nearby. Everyone froze. Lyra's heart pounded hard. The man grabbed a stick and stood protectively in front of the two girls. Mira held a small knife, her eyes sharp and ready. Out of the shadows stepped a young hunter, different from the others. His face was tense, but his eyes held a question, not anger. He looked at Lyra with a strange mix of fear and curiosity. "Wait," he said, raising his hands slowly. "I don't want to fight. I want to talk." The man lowered his stick but stayed alert. Mira did not move. Lyra watched the hunter carefully. "I've heard stories about you," the hunter said, his voice low. "About the alien girl who can glow and the humans who protect her. Some want to capture you, but not all of us." Lyra's eyes widened. Could this be a chance to end the chase? Could someone from the hunters actually be a friend? The hunter stepped closer, speaking softly. "I know a place where you can be safe. A place where no one will harm you." Mira exchanged a quick glance with the man. They didn't trust him yet, but hope was hard to ignore. Over the next days, the group followed the hunter through secret trails and hidden valleys. The forest seemed to watch over them, its green leaves whispering in the wind. But the journey was not easy. The hunters who wanted to capture Lyra still searched. Sometimes their voices grew louder, closer. Lyra's glowing grew stronger with every step, a light born from fear and hope. One night, as they rested under a wide tree, the hunter shared stories of his own. He told them about people in his village who dreamed of peace and friendship, not fear and war. Lyra listened, feeling a connection she never expected. Slowly, the line between friend and foe began to blur. The small alien girl who once feared humans now found herself standing with one, not as enemies, but as allies. But danger was still near. The forest held secrets, and the hunters would not stop until they had what they wanted. Lyra knew the hardest part was yet to come. But with Mira, the man, and now a new friend by her side, she felt ready to face whatever waited in the shadows. The story was far from over. The fight for safety, trust, and freedom had only just begun. The days grew warmer, and the forest around them seemed alive with a quiet promise. Lyra, Mira, the man, and their new companion moved carefully but with hope in their steps. They had found a hidden valley, deep within the woods, where the trees grew tall and thick, and the sounds of danger felt far away. This was the place the hunter had promised, a sanctuary. But peace did not come easily. The hunters who chased Lyra were relentless. Their voices echoed in the distance, growing louder, closer. One night, under a sky full of stars, the group knew the final test was near. Lyra stood by the riverbank, the cool water touching her fingers. Her skin glowed softly, a light born from her fear and courage. She looked at Mira and the others. They had become her family, the ones who protected her when she felt most alone. Suddenly, the hunters appeared at the edge of the valley. Their faces were hard, their eyes full of anger and greed. They raised their strange tools, ready to take what they wanted. But Lyra was not afraid anymore. She stepped forward, her light growing stronger, spreading like waves over the trees and rocks. It was more than just glowing. It was power, hope, and defiance all at once. The hunters shielded their eyes, stumbling back. The man raised his voice, calling for peace. You do not need to fear what you do not understand. Lyra is not a prize or a threat. She is a friend. Mira stood beside Lyra, holding her hand firmly. We can live together. We don't need to fight. For a moment, the valley was silent except for the soft crackle of the fire. One of the hunters lowered his tool and stepped forward. Maybe we were wrong, he said quietly. Others followed, lowering their weapons slowly. Lyra's heart swelled. The fear she had carried for so long began to fade. She saw not enemies, but people willing to learn, to change. The night passed, and a new dawn came. The hunters and the friends shared food and stories. Walls built from fear and misunderstanding began to crumble. Lyra looked at the sky and smiled. She had come to Earth scared and alone, afraid of being eaten or captured. But now, she was part of something bigger: friendship, trust, and hope. Her journey was not just about survival. It was about breaking down the walls between worlds and showing that kindness could grow even in the darkest places. The forest was no longer a place of fear but a home filled with light. And as the sun rose, Lyra knew the adventure had changed her forever, and maybe, just maybe, it had changed the humans too. A small, bright light appeared in the dark sky above a quiet forest. It moved fast and closer to the ground. The light grew bigger and bigger until it became a tiny spacecraft. Inside it, a small alien girl sat nervously. She was no taller than a child on Earth, with big shiny eyes and soft green skin. Her name was Lyra. Lyra had traveled a long way from her home planet. She was scared because she did not know much about this new world. Stories from her people told her that humans were dangerous. They might want to catch her or even eat her. These thoughts made her heart beat fast. She looked outside the window of her small ship and saw tall trees and strange noises. The forest looked alive and mysterious. Suddenly, the ship landed softly on the forest floor. Lyra took a deep breath and opened the door. The cold night air touched her skin. She stepped out carefully, her small feet touching the soft grass. The moonlight made the leaves shine silver. Everything felt so different and strange. Lyra's big eyes searched the darkness. She wanted to find a safe place to hide, but she was also curious. She had never seen a world like this. The trees were tall and moved with the wind. Strange sounds came from animals she had never heard of. The night was full of life, but Lyra was alone. She remembered the stories from her home. Humans are big and scary. They might want to catch you, her mother had said. Lyra shivered. She moved quickly behind a thick tree trunk and watched silently. Her small hands held tightly to a shiny stone, a gift from her family for protection. As she looked around, she saw a small fire in the distance. Around it sat some humans. They talked and laughed, but Lyra could not understand their words. Their faces looked different from what she imagined. They did not seem angry or cruel. Instead, they looked happy and calm. Lyra's fear did not go away, but she was confused. Could humans really be so different? Her heart was still full of worry. She remembered the warning, "Never trust humans," but something in their voices felt warm. Suddenly, a sound from the forest made Lyra jump. A branch broke nearby. Her eyes widened in fear. She ran quietly deeper into the forest, trying to stay hidden. The trees closed around her like a green wall. She hoped no one followed her. Lyra's mind was full of questions. Was she safe on this strange planet? Would she find friends or only danger? She sat down on a soft patch of moss, feeling tired and alone. The forest was quiet again, but her fear stayed. The small alien girl looked up at the stars. They were different from the stars on her home planet. She wished to go back but knew she could not. She had a mission to complete and a new world to explore. For the first time, Lyra felt something new. Hope. Maybe this planet was not as scary as she thought. Maybe, just maybe, she could find a place where she belonged.